Ancient Egyptians carved this into a wall. When an engineer built it, it turned on. The most common mistake people make about ancient technology is assuming it was trying to do the same thing ours does. It wasn't. In Egypt, there's a carving that looks like a light bulb. In India, a text that reads like a battery manual. But neither of them makes sense until you stop asking what they were building and start asking what they thought electricity was. In a crypt beneath the Dendera temple in Egypt, there are carvings that look exactly like giant light bulbs with a serpent coiled inside. 4,000 miles away, an ancient Indian text describes a working battery. You may have heard of these before, but here's what no one is telling you. These aren't isolated curiosities, they are pieces of something much bigger. The ancients didn't just tinker with electricity, they saw it as the force behind everything. The universe, consciousness, your own heartbeat. Today, we decode that story. I'm gonna show you why most ancient cultures had a thunder god, and why that thunder god usually battles a serpent. It's a code. First, we'll look at the Dendera light and the Agastya text, including the code words that confused people for thousands of years. Then, we'll decode the thunder god myth across 4 civilizations: India, Greece, Egypt, and Northern Europe. And finally, I'll show you what this means for you, literally, in your own body. Let's begin. The Dendera temple in Egypt is dedicated to Hathor, the goddess of joy and love. But beneath the main temple, there's a series of crypts. On the walls carved around 50 BC are 7 images that look like, well, modern technology. You can see what appears to be a large glass bulb. Inside it, a serpent stretches from one end to the other. There's what looks like a cable running from the base into a box. And the whole thing is supported by a jet pillar, what Egyptologists call the spine of Osiris. Mainstream archaeology interprets this as a mythological scene, a lotus flower giving birth to a snake, symbolizing creation. Actually, that interpretation is not wrong, it's just very limited. William Sosa spent 30 years studying these images. He didn't study them as mythology, but as engineering diagrams. He noticed details that others had missed. The position of the figure's hands, the specific shape of the flower, the way the cable connects to the box. When he built a device following these specifications, a glass tube filled with specific gases connected to a high voltage source through what he identified as a tuned circuit, something happened. A plasma discharge formed inside, and it looked exactly like the serpent in the carvings. It moved. It responded to electrical fields. When Sosa put his hand near the glass, the plasma serpent moved away, just like a living snake. But Egypt is not the only place where we can find evidence of ancient electrical knowledge. In India, there's a text called the Agastya Samhita, attributed to a sage, Agastya, who lived at least 4,000 years ago. One passage has puzzled scholars. Having placed a copper plate in an earthen vessel, one should put into it copper sulfate and a small silver plate. From their contact arises a power known as Mitra Varuna. If you know anything about chemistry, this should sound familiar. This describes a galvanic cell, a battery, but the text doesn't say these ingredients like copper sulfate directly. It uses a code word. The original Sanskrit says Shikigreva, which translates to the neck of a peacock. For centuries, people who tried this actually tried to use peacock necks in their experiments. Surprise, it didn't work. But YouTuber Praveen Mohan noticed something. Copper sulfate solution has the exact same iridescent blue-green color as a peacock's neck. The ancients were using a code word that made perfect sense to anyone who had seen both. When you build this device using copper sulfate instead of actual peacock neck, it works. It produces electricity. Multiple cells connected together can light a LED bulb, charge a phone, even run a small motor. The text calls the energy produced the power of Mitra and Varuna, the Vedic gods of light and cosmic order. Why the serpent? Why does a snake appear inside the Dendera light? Why do thunder gods battle serpents? To answer that, we need to understand how the ancients actually saw electricity. Ancient people didn't see electricity the way we do. When we think of electricity, we think of wires and outlets and electrons flowing through conductors. It's a very specific, very limited phenomenon for us. The ancients saw something much bigger. They saw electricity as the principle underlying all of existence, the force that creates and sustains everything. And from a certain perspective, they were right. Over 99% of the visible universe exists in a plasma state. Plasma is sometimes called the fourth state of matter. Actually, it's the first state of matter. And we usually see plasma when gas becomes so energized that electrons separate from atoms. But stars are plasma. The space between stars is filled with plasma. The sun that gives us life is a giant ball of plasma. The universe runs on electricity. And the ancients encoded this understanding in a story about a thunder god and a serpent. In the oldest text of India, the Rig Veda, the king of the gods is Indra. He wields the Vrtra, the thunderbolt, defeating a serpent or dragon who has coiled around the cosmic waters and held them captive. In Greek mythology, Zeus is the king of the gods, wielder of the thunderbolt. His most terrible enemy is Typhon. In Norse mythology, Thor is the thunder god, wielding his hammer. His eternal enemy is Jörmungandr, the Midgård serpent, a snake so vast it encircles the entire world and grasps its own tail. Egypt gives us a more complex version. Every night, the sun god Ra must journey through the Duat, the underworld, the realm outside of the ordered existence. There, waiting in the darkness, is Apep, a vast serpent of chaos, whose only purpose is to stop Ra's movement, to swallow the light, to return everything to motionless potential. The ancients were encoding a principle. Existence itself arises from the tension between two opposite poles. Call them positive and negative, active and passive, yang and yin, order and chaos. The thunder god represents the active pole, the force that initiates, that strikes. The serpent represents the tension itself, the coiled potential between the poles. This is why the serpent is not simply evil. If the serpent were just the enemy, we wouldn't see it everywhere as a positive symbol, but we do. The caduceus, two serpents coiled around a staff, is the symbol of medicine and healing. In yoga, Kundalini is depicted as a serpent coiled at the base of the spine, waiting to rise. The Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail, represents eternity and cycles of existence. How can the same symbol be both the enemy of the thunder god and the force of life itself? Because the serpent isn't good or evil. The serpent is the electrical tension between poles. When that energy is blocked, stagnant, held captive, it appears as the enemy. It must be released. When that same energy flows freely through a system, through the universe, through your body, it's life itself. This is why there's a serpent inside the Dendera lithe. The plasma, that flowing luminous energy, is the serpent. The ancients were using serpent imagery to describe the universal principle. Every thought you have is electricity. Every beat of your heart is triggered by electricity. Every movement you make is electricity traveling from your brain through your nerves to your muscles. The ancients called this prana, they called it chi, they called it ka. We can call it bioelectricity. The ancient practices were technologies for working with this electricity. Consider the word hatha. Ha represents positive pole, symbolically the sun. Tha represents the negative that is symbolized by the moon. The entire purpose of hatha yoga is to bring these two opposite forces into harmony. You are not separate from this principle. You are that principle expressed in human form. Modern science is beginning to understand this. For example, we now know that fascia have piezoelectric properties. The ancients didn't have oscilloscopes and voltmeters, or maybe they did, I don't know. But they mapped these currents, they developed practices to work with them, and they encoded what they knew in myths and symbols that have survived for thousands of years. What I've shown you today is one layer of much deeper code. The Thunder God and the Serpent myth encodes more than just the principle of electric polarity. It's a map of consciousness itself. In my next video, we'll go even further back to the first symbol. We are decoding the fish that founded civilization. And if you're ready to dive in and integrate these practices into your daily life right away, go to ancientscience.com.